I dare say it makes me alive. It was the eve of the summer sun celebration. All across Ponyville, ponies gathered in happy little clusters, forming circles around brilliant bonfires that shone like amber plumes under the crimson kiss of the sunset. The air was filled with laughter, murmurs, and music as the villagers prepared for the annual tradition of an entire night spent awake in the joyful sway of camaraderie. Princess Celestia was visiting Baltimore that year, but that didn't stop the Ponyvillians from eagerly greeting the morning sunrise and giving thanks to their patron Alicorn for bringing light to Equestria each day. One soul, however, was anything but jubilant. The Earth Pony sat alone beside a bonfire, displaced from the thick of the crowd. There was a sullen shadow over his orange coat and earthen-brown mane that night. It matched the stallion's melancholic expression as he stared tiredly into the flames, his ears barely pricking to the music that wafted over his slumped shoulders. As the day slowly died around him, forming a purple roof to the village full of summer merriment, his eyes closed and he exhaled a cold sigh. Just then there was a cheerful voice echoing over the crackling, burning pyre before them. "Caramel, hey there, dude, what's happening?" Caramel looked up with a start, then breathed easier. He attempted a practiced grin. It fell flat, but he kept his politeness. "Hey there, Thunderlane, Blossomforth, what are you up to?" The Pegasus couple shuffled up to the bonfire where Caramel was seated. "We were about to ask you the same thing, dude," Thunderlane exclaimed. "The gang's all hanging out beside the town hall building. Rumor has it that the mayor's godchild, a Wonderbolt, is visiting from Cloudsdale," Blossomforth added with a grin, her freckles illuminated by the nearby tongues of flame. "Supposedly he's gonna do some air tricks for us before the fireworks start at moonrise." Sounds pretty sweet," Caramel said with a grin, albeit a grin that was already crumbling. "But face it, you guys, your little clique of Pegasi is awesome, but I always feel like dead weight when I'm around you." "Nonsense." Blossomforth's face grew long. "How can you say that, Caramel? We love it when you hang around." "Yeah, besides," Thunderlane wagged his eyebrows, "Wind Whistler's gonna be there." "Shh." Blossomforth lightly slapped Thunderlane's chest with one of her milk-white wings. "Thunder, what did we talk about earlier? Geez, sorry, I was only trying to—" Caramel cleared his throat. He stared at the two and said, "You're both souls of Solstice tonight, aren't you?" The two Pegasi glanced back at him, smiled bashfully. Their cheeks turned matching shades of red as they dug at the ground with errant hooves. "Yes, well, so what if it's our second time in a row being souls of Solstice? There's no other choice, really. I know all of the ponies have been talking about us since Hearts and Hooves Day, but, egads, is it really that big of a deal?" Caramel smiled softly at them, a very genuine thing. "I'm glad for you two. I really am. I'm sure every other pony is as well. I hope your summer sun celebration is fantastic and memorable, but as for myself, I really just want to sit here and relax. A lot of stuff has happened over the past year, and this is my first opportunity to think, you know?" "But it doesn't mean that you have to think alone, does it? This is a special night, Caramel. You have friends. In fact, Winnie was just talking the other day about... She bit her lip guiltily and glanced up at Thunderlane. Thunderlane smiled, nuzzled her, and glanced one last time Caramel's way. "You sure you don't want to change your mind, bro?" "Go on, you two souls of Solstice." Caramel spoke in a detached voice. He closed his eyes once more and relaxed to the musical chords that were softly serenading his lonesome ears into the crest of the night. "Embrace the sunrise together. Don't worry about me." The two Pegasi slowly, sadly left his side. Their hooves were distant shuffles amidst the bonfire's crackling embers. Once his friends were nothing but a memory, Caramel sighed. He opened his eyes and dug twin circles in the dirt between him and the flames, as if mapping out a solemn eternity for himself. It was precisely then that the music died. "It's a lot like dreaming, isn't it?" Caramel blinked awkwardly. He raised his head, glancing all around, until his gaze finally fell upon me. What's like dreaming?" he asked. "Living," I said. I stood a few meters behind him, my body leaning up against a wooden post. My lyre levitated in front of me as I reached up and lowered the shale-gray hoodie from over my horn. Sunrise and sunset. Our days pass by between sleeping and waking. It's like a constantly changing stage play with the darkest curtains imaginable. I sighed softly and began magically plucking the strings of the lyre. The instrument was leading the conversation. Words were merely a background chorus. You like an actor who's lost all motivation, but dare I ask why? Look, thanks for your concern, but I'm really just here to relax with my thoughts, if you don't mind. You can, play some music, though. Music it is! I smiled gently and resumed plucking the strings with soft magic. As the melody resumed, Caramel was hardly at ease. He fidgeted, his limbs jolting with jittery nature that rivaled the snapping embers of the burning pyre. Finally, he spoke up. My friends just wouldn't understand. Huh? I uttered from where I was strumming. What was that? My friends, the Pegasi who were here just now. The ones who happily trotted off without you? Who can blame them? This should be a night of celebration, yeah? Well, yeah. Is there a reason you're not celebrating with them? Oh, it's nothing important. Very well, then. I'll just be here with my music. Barely hiding a smile, I uttered this. His jaw tensed. After flaring his nostrils, Caramel muttered aloud. I used to love this annual event, but this year it's not so easy. I was a perfect stranger, and yet he spoke to me. Something in the worn edges of his face announced a desperate need to speak, or else I would have never bothered ushering the truth from him to begin with. If nothing else, the summer sun celebration reminds me that so much time has gone by, and so little good has come of it. He issued a shuddering sigh, and his blue eyes returned to the blaze before him. I see. I nodded, filling the air with a somber melody that matched the pitch of his own voice. So, some pony has a hard time sleeping, much less dreaming. He smirked slightly, then squinted at me. You're not from around here, are you? I'm not about to spread any horrible rumors that your acquaintances would ever remember, if that's what you mean to ask. Oh, it's not that. He spoke, though the wavering in his voice put his honesty in question. It's just that it's the summer sun celebration, and every pony should be at home, where they're happy. He gulped, and he added, they should be with the ones they love. I am myself a long way from home, I said in a cold breath. It was all too quickly replaced with a warm smile as I plucked the lyre boldly and happily. But the ones I love, I wouldn't abandon them for an instant. Now what about you? Caramel's face winced as if a horrible dagger had burrowed itself through him. It's complicated. What can be so complicated that it wrecks something as simple as finding another soul of Solstice? I remarked with a grin. I hummed briefly to accompany the notes of my lyre before speaking once more. It's a tradition as of old time. When Princess Celestia first raised the sun over Equestria, she discovered 3 pairs of ponies, the ancestors of unicorns, earth ponies, and Pegasi, and she blessed these souls of Solstice with the light they needed to begin a civilization of glory, honor, and love. To this day, every pony is a treasured soul that they can cherish above all else. I'm sure you're no exception. Yeah. I suppose it's just I'm a little afraid. Aren't we all? That's no excuse, he exclaimed, frowning, though the anger was hardly aimed at me. Things have been so tough lately. I can handle it all on my own, but Windy... Caramel's frown dissolved to allow a grimace to cross his face. He sighed, slumping once more to the ground before the bonfire. I hummed, strumming a few chords before glancing his way. I assume you're speaking of Wind Whistler that your companions mentioned a moment ago. She's a special mare in my life, Caramel said. His gaze melted into the flames. You said that living is like dreaming, right? When Windy's around, it's like there's always a good dream, and I never want to wake up. She's kind and cheerful, honest and smart. She takes me apart with her laughter, as if I was made of matchsticks, and only the sound of her voice can put me back together again. I giggled as I paused on strumming my lyre. Methinks I picked up William Flankspear's bonfire this year. He smirked and glanced at me through the corner of his eyes. Wind Whistler herself has said that I sound like a poet, though when I'm around her, I feel like there's a bunch of marbles in my mouth I can Barely ever say the right thing. Words seldom work the way we want them to, I said. Righteously, I resumed strumming the lyre, filling the spaces between my breath with a bit of harmony. So why isn't Wind Whistler here with you? I'd pay 100 bits to see the marbles spill out of a grown stallion's mouth like that. I'd ask her to be Souls of Solstice with me in a moment, but it wouldn't be right. Oh. Caramel gulped. After a collapsing breath, he finally let it all out. Life on my family's farm has hit rock bottom. The celery stalks are all dying. We can't produce the crops to meet this year's coming harvest. My mother and father have resorted to selling livestock, but that isn't helping us where we need it to. My family has gotten into contact with some distant relatives in Winnipeg. We're seriously talking about moving out of town before hearth's warming, ditching the farm, selling it, and everything. I suppose I could stay here in Ponyville, but what kind of life would that be? In the best-case scenario, I'd be living out of an apartment and barely finding time to sleep between 2 or maybe even 3 jobs. This sounds like a case of bad luck, I said with a sagely nod. Though I must be forward and just ask, what does this have to do with the fact that you're not spending tonight with Wind Whistler anyway? We've been getting closer and closer for the better part of a year. She knows only so little. Things in my life are about to get crazier, and... He clenched his eyes shut and shuddered briefly. She's so happy and full of life. She doesn't need to be weighed down by a lousy earth pony like me. She doesn't need my troubles clouding her blue skies. I love her. I really do. And that's why I gotta let her go. I hit a heavy note. Its reverberations danced sharply between us as I cast a curious glance his way. Oh, really? If I asked her to be Souls of Solstice with me, I'd only be giving the wrong message. It's the summer sun celebration, the mark of the new year. For me, at least. It's time I committed myself to what I need to do for my future, and for her future as well. He gazed woefully into the flames, as if the happier colors of his life were being tossed into that all-consuming fire. It's time I gave her up. It's all for the best. I nodded. It's always for the best when we let a dream die before it's finished, I said in a droning voice. After all, when the dream gets us to where we want to be, then there's no point in dreaming anymore, is there? Caramel blinked. He glanced up at me with a scrunched face. Huh? Doesn't make much sense to you either, does it? I resumed strumming, this time tossing a cheerful rhythm in his direction. Tell me, have you ever heard the tale of the mad pony? Caramel scratched his head in confusion, ultimately smirking. What? You fancy yourself a bard? I've been sillier things before. Would you like to hear it? What, the tale? He gulped and turned once more towards the flames. I don't know. Is it long? I glanced up at the western horizon. There was still a sliver of crimson across the edge of the world. The moon was nowhere to be seen. It's short enough, as are all good things in this precious world. If you would prefer, I'll just let my lyre do all the talking. It makes very little difference either way. I'm good. I'm not really going anywhere. He sighed and stared off in the distant bonfires where other ponies were currently engaged in crowded conversations, all of them laced with a cheerfulness he was sorely lacking. Besides, I could use a good story. Life's been a dull novel as of late. I smiled. The best audience was an innocent audience. The challenge is in keeping the audience innocent throughout the end of the story. Without a moment's hesitation, I raised my lyre high above my head and let the notes soar majestically above the reach of the bonfire's flames. The tale of the mad pony starts in a town much like this one, and during a summer sun celebration, just as jubilant and fancy as the one we are about to enjoy.